Have you ever felt that sudden, out of nowhere wave of pure terror for absolutely no reason? That intense, bolts from the blue feeling is exactly what we're diving into today. We're going to demystify panic disorder, taking you on a journey from that moment of fear to a place of real understanding and hope. So, to really get a handle on this, we have to go beyond just the textbook definitions. Let's start with the anatomy of an attack. What does it actually feel like when it's happening to you? So, what does it feel like? I want you to imagine this. You're just going about your day, maybe you're grabbing a coffee or just walking down the street, when suddenly, with no warning at all, it starts in your chest. Your heart just begins to pound, racing like you've just sprinted a mile. And it's not just fast. It feels like it's trying to hammer its way right out of your body. For so many people, this is the very first signal that something is going terribly wrong. And right after that, your breath catches. You get this intense feeling of being suffocated, like you're choking. You're gasping, trying to pull in air, but it feels like your lungs just won't work. It is absolutely terrifying. And it's not just physical. At the same time, your mind starts to spiral with this one terrifying thought: I am completely losing control. Or even, I'm going crazy. It feels like you're detaching from reality, and it's so disorienting. All of those intense, chaotic sensations, the heart, the breathing, the racing thoughts, they all funnel into one single, overwhelming certainty. You are about to die. Your brain is getting all these signals and it misinterprets them, screaming that you're having a heart attack or some other medical emergency. And that whole horrifying experience, well, it has a name: a panic attack. It's officially defined as a sudden surge of intense fear that comes on fast, peaks within minutes, and then usually fades in about 20 or 30 minutes. But let me tell you, when you're in it, it feels like an absolute eternity. Okay, so that's the what, but the million-dollar question is why? Why does this even happen? Well, it turns out it's not just one thing. It's more like a perfect storm, a complex mix of different factors all coming together. So first, let's look at the biology. For some people, it's just in their genes. They're more predisposed. For others, it might be an imbalance in brain chemicals, like GABA, which is basically the brain's calm-down signal. This can lead to an overactive amygdala, the brain's little fear center, or even something called a false suffocation alarm, where your brain is just way too sensitive to carbon dioxide in your blood. But it's not just about our biology. The way we think plays a huge part too. This is where something called anxiety sensitivity comes in. It's basically the tendency to feel a totally normal bodily sensation, like your heart skipping a beat, and immediately interpret it as a sign of absolute doom. You do that enough times, and you create a really powerful learned fear response. And finally, of course, there's our environment. Things going on around us can absolutely be a trigger. We're talking about major stressful life events, a history of trauma, or even just using stimulants like caffeine. These external things can be the final piece of the puzzle that tips a person over the edge. Now, having a panic attack is one thing. A lot of people might have one in their lifetime. But when does it cross that line from being an isolated, awful episode into an actual clinical condition? This distinction is so important. So here's the key difference. A panic attack is the event itself, that acute episode that lasts for minutes. Panic disorder, on the other hand, is a chronic condition that's all about the aftermath. It's defined by the persistent worry and fear about having more attacks. It basically becomes a fear of the fear itself. So the official diagnosis for panic disorder is this. It's when someone has recurrent, unexpected attacks and then spends at least a month constantly worried about it happening again. And that worry leads to big changes in behavior, like avoiding places where you think an attack might happen, say the grocery store or the highway. And just how common is this? Well, somewhere between 2 and 5% of the population will experience panic disorder in their lifetime. That's millions and millions of people. It is far from rare. And here's something really interesting. The data consistently shows that panic disorder is diagnosed about twice as often in women as it is in men. Now, the reasons for that are super complex and are still being researched, but the statistic itself is incredibly solid. All right, now for the part of this explainer that truly matters the most, the path to recovery. Because here's the great news. There are incredibly effective, science-backed treatments that can make a massive difference. There is so much hope here. The absolute gold standard psychological treatment is something called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. It's this really structured, common sense approach with 4 key parts. First, there's education, just learning what the heck is happening in your body during that fight or flight response. Then, cognitive restructuring. That's where you learn to catch and challenge those catastrophic thoughts. After that comes exposure therapy, where you gradually face the sensations you're afraid of to teach your brain they aren't dangerous. And finally, you learn breathing and relaxation techniques to get control back over your body's response. Medication can also be a really powerful tool. The first-line options are typically SSRIs or SNRIs, and these are for long-term management to lower your overall anxiety level. Then there are second-line drugs, benzodiazepines. These can offer immediate relief, but, and this is a big but, they're used very cautiously because they have a high risk of dependence. So while getting professional treatment is absolutely the cornerstone, managing this condition is also about what you do day in and day out. So what does long-term wellness actually look like, and how can you start building resilience against panic? The best way to think about it is like building your own prevention toolkit. It's built on the basics: actively managing your stress every day, getting help for anxiety symptoms early on, avoiding triggers you know about, like caffeine, and really committing to a healthy lifestyle, diet, exercise, sleep, the whole thing. And probably the most important tool in that kit, sticking with regular follow-ups with a professional to keep you on track. And I really want to end on this because it is the most important takeaway of all. With early diagnosis and the right treatment, the prognosis for panic disorder is overwhelmingly good. Recovery isn't just a random possibility. For most people, it's the expected outcome. So we want to leave you with a question to chew on. Whether this is something you're navigating yourself or you're trying to support someone you love, what is one small, doable step you can take for your mental health starting today?